What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pinpointe Unfiltered. I am Rachel.
And it's your boy Josh. How's everybody doing today? Rach, I feel like it's been a minute. Who do we have on the hot seat today?
Today we have Rob Napoli. He is the managing director of BelCham. For those that don't know what that is, it's Belgium American Chamber of Commerce. And before that, I believe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but working with Benelux, the Belgian, Netherlands, and Luxembourg accelerator type program for startups in those countries that are trying to expand to the US. So, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, y'all.
Yeah, we met at the deal day for our Scale Ready Studio cohort when we were in that program by Get Shit Done. And that was pretty cool. And then I feel like it was like Kismet that we met.
Yeah. And I love Alex Metdorf.
Yeah.
That program she runs is awesome. But, what was even cooler was you were sitting there chatting it up and I was looking for a table. I was like, yo, it look cool as hell. I want to sit down and have fun. And immediately you just engaged me into your conversation about cooking and meeting families and this and that. And I was like, hey, I found my peoples, at the table where it's just good vibes only. So it was a lot of fun. And then, Rachel, you hit your little speech. And I was like, I really loved the way you delivered and how you brought I was talking to one of my buddies and we're like, that's one of the best short pitches we've seen because it was packed with facts, but it was so overly done. And you had a really good call to action. So I had to go up and talk to y'all. So it just worked out.
Appreciate it. Thanks. I was so nervous about
Rachel
that.
did kill it that day, guys. I wish we had more clips of that. That was a good one.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So tell us, what do you do as managing director for BelCham?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. BelCham is, it's a business chamber of commerce that fuels Belgian ambitions in the U.S. We're a transatlantic binational program, and we really help in a couple different ways. One is our business network community. We're built on memberships. We have over 400 members in the chamber. So we have our membership community. We also do what's called J1 visa program. This is a cultural exchange visa. So we bring over people from Europe to the US through companies to really get 12 to 18 months, 6, 12 or 18 month, cultural exchange type of experiences working for US companies. And then we run a co-working space as well. So we have our Atelier, which is a co-working space. And it's a land and expand point for European businesses, specifically Belgian, but we kind of branch out to the wider Benelux, where we have, virtual address services. So if you're just getting started, we have mail handling, packaging, all the way to flex desk, dedicated desk, private office spaces. We run events out of there, giving Belgian businesses a place to launch as they come into the US, obviously out of New York, but that's not usually their final destination spot. It could be the Midwest, down south, out on the West Coast, but it's a launching point for them into the US to really have a community, have a place to come and work and be around other like-minded people as they're building a business, or if they're established business or just getting started in the US to really carry that momentum into a new market.
Got you. Yeah, it's super helpful. I'm assuming for all these companies, I have no idea what the US market is like. But I'm curious, do you see how's the flow of people coming from Belgium or Europe at large, right? Do you see that growing or waning in terms of, that flow of companies that are trying to move here and the people alongside it?
I mean, it's cyclical at times, but I don't think anything's slowed down. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world today geopolitically that has caused struggles in terms of growth, but the U.S. has and will continue to be one of the largest markets in terms of the way the economy works and the ability to grow a business. So not only it is expensive, but the low barrier to entry in terms of the ability to be able to come in and sell. The ability that the market is huge, that you have to look at it not as one continuous thing. It's, each state kind of operates a bit like its own country with different taxes, regulations, things like that. So understanding how that works out. So it's going to be high. It's going to continue to be where people want to be. The opportunity is just potential is too great, and also capital here from a investment standpoint. VCs and investors here write checks that are 5 to 10 times bigger than that in Europe, mostly because Americans in America by nature is a lot more of a risk taker, where Europeans by nature are much more risk averse. So
Mm-hmm.
while everything is happening around us, it still is a place that people want to grow a business. And it's still kind of that, I want to say, it's kind of that like goalpost of like, if you make it here, like you've made it as a global company, right? It becomes significantly easier to expand to the whole globe if you have a strong US presence.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this country is a country of consumers, so we're gonna buy everything. Um, I've spoken to Norwegian founders, Australian founders, Slovakian, Lithuanian, a whole different hodgepodge of people. And I think there's a common thread of we're not big enough to expand to the US. And I've heard a bunch of different people say, throw that mindset out. Like you should probably start in the US and then work your way back to your home country and then Europe, and Asia. How do you see that? Like, and what's your perspective on that?
Well, it's duplicitous, and the best answer I can give is it depends on what you want, right? Certain certain businesses, certain industries, you got to come here first and just go, because if you can make it
Okay.
here, everything else becomes easier. But if what I'm looking at is more of like the startup scale ups that have product market fit and have really grown in their country. I think it's also great to grow locally, kind of really build that out and create a solid base from a funding level, because then you can use that to a springboard in.
Hmm.
But the minute that you decide to make the jump, whether you're going out the gate to the US and working back, or you develop in your home country and go over, the minute you come across the pond and decide you're going to come here, you need to be 2 feet in, 10 toes down, right? You can't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And so, what I mean by that, if you're going to come here, you need to have somebody that either can run the operations back in your home country really well and keep that operating, and have the people here focus here, or hire somebody here that can really drive that forward so you can focus in the home country. Because if you try to split time, you'll run you'll run ragged, so to speak. So
Hmm.
I think it's whatever. I personally like when companies own their home market and have that stability and that kind of revenue to kind of come and launch. If I'm saying, hey, you're new and you have funding and you have the ability and the capital to get started here, then come here and get started. It is a different ball game in the fact that the dollar here doesn't go as far as there, right? Like people come over and they're shocked by the prices, they're shocked by salaries, cost of rent, setting up a company, how competitive this market is. And everyone likes to say, oh, we have no competition. I'll call bullshit every time. The US market is one of the most saturated markets. You can have it a competitive advantage,
Hmm.
but you're always going to be competing against something and someone else. So you have to come up with that mindset that what makes you unique and be able to tell your story and highlight it. So I don't think there's any right way to do it. It's either you own your home market, and once you use that to springboard,
Hmm.
amazing. Or you decide, hey, if I want to be there and the timing is right, the market is right, go to where the biggest market is and figure out how to get that started. So for me, it's whatever fits what you're trying to do. And it is dependent on industry. It is dependent on capital. It is dependent on a lot of things. But both ideas are right. Mm.
Hmm.
It really depends on like how you want to build your business and where you want to strike first and make your mark.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
So Rob, I'm assuming you get to like interact, meet, and see, and kind of get the inside look of different, startups, different types of startups in different industries. Um, Even though they're coming to the States, for me, it's more, I'm being more specific about, let's say, New York, where what types of like industries that you're seeing are starting to come specifically to New York and, want to get a foothold in like the New York market, given the fact, like you were talking about, we have higher rent, higher cost of living, even than, let's say, the other states in, America?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think New York has become this really eclectic ecosystem over the last decade. To give a little context, when I moved to New York back in 2017, I was bringing an Italian based startup from Milan. It was a wearable device connected to an app. I did a 3-month accelerator, won the accelerator competition, helped them raise money, and we realized it was too expensive to come. And so I've seen this kind of journey play out from spaces. When we think about New York specific, New York is to be seen as like venture capital, so a lot of fintech, tech, martech, right, and sales tech, those kind of traditional businesses. But what we've seen really grow in New York is that almost any business could be here. If you just go across the river to Jersey, a lot of pharma, life sciences, there's been a huge push for that here in New York. There's been a lot of energy and effort spent for climate tech in a city like New York, in the state of New York by the New York EDC, and then a lot of partnerships with different regions over in Europe to do accelerators and bring over. Upstate in Syracuse, there's a big accelerator that's really focused on the drone industry.
Mm.
So you're really seeing that New York used to be seen as kind of more the fintech, ad tech, martech, sales tech kind of space. And then you had, all the other businesses going to the West Coast. But over this last decade, more capital is being deployed out of New York. It's also partly because New York is a great starting spot. A lot of companies come over here, start in New York because of the ecosystem, because there's more VC money and a lot more VCs that are willing, the networking opportunities, the company opportunity. We're also seeing a big push. VCs typically used to do a lot more seed, pre-seed, early money. We're seeing a shift away from that where they're looking more at bigger bets and they're following rounds into Series B, Series C. So the capital for early stage is becoming less, but we're seeing a lot of innovation, a lot of big corporates that are actually looking at doing partnerships, merger acquisition, or investing in these businesses, bring them over as part of an accelerator incubator program to really kind of bring that next level of technology into a wider umbrella. And that happens in a place like New York at a scale that's faster, bigger, and more intense than other places across. So every industry is coming over here, at least as a starting point. And there's just so many more programs that run out of here. So we're seeing, it used to be fairly specific. Now we're seeing a broad spectrum companies that could come over here.
Sweet. Yeah. What is something that you've seen that companies coming from Europe assume about New York City, whether it's market expansion or anything else, and they end up getting it wrong every single time? Is there anything like that?
Usually two things. One is usually hiring. One of the first things they tend to want to do is hire executive like VP of sales that comes from a network or an industry with, a little black book and really build from there. The problem with that is a lot of times they're no longer builders, so they don't know how to roll up their sleeves. They don't have the same support and capital to go and build the teams. They have to do everything themselves and kind of fail. So you see that they hire somebody for 6 figures and then 6 months later you're letting them go. And they also don't understand the whole at-will employment thing very well. So they tend to keep people on longer than expected and things aren't growing. And that's a huge mistake that turns into a $300,000, $500,000 mistake. That's step one, right? So the hiring wrong is usually the biggest thing. And the
Mm-hmm.
second thing is investing too much too fast in office space or getting the company set up and putting all the money to kind of set the infrastructure, which is super expensive, and then not really focused on the pipeline of driving the business. And they're so busy setting everything else up that you
Mm-hmm.
lose out on the momentum of building the business. And so it's better to come over small, keep your expenses in operation costs low as possible, build and grow. Mm. And then kind of the third on top of that is if they do hire somebody not super senior, is are they putting the person in the right position to succeed, right? When you're in New
Mm-hmm.
York, you're figuratively and literally on an island when you're working for a non-US based company. You have time zone differences. If you don't know the product yet, don't know how to make decisions, you're setting up the right tools, tech, everything. And so you're not giving them the tools and support they need to succeed. And they struggle. And then you run through turnover. And as Americans, we know how to sell our shit well. So they also don't know how to see the bullshit a little bit. They don't know how to hire well. Those are kind of the common things I see. It really comes down to bad hires and trying to run too
Mhm.
fast and setting up an office and getting all the operational stuff set up. And they miss the product market fit or go to market, and they're spending more cash than they thought they were going to spend the gate without money coming in, and puts them in a backward position very fast.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that actually kind of leads into what I wanted to ask you also.
Before you get into that, Rachel, all I heard about all those problems was call Josh and Rachel, call Josh and Rachel, call Josh and Rachel. Like all those problems we can actually like fix.
No,
for
I
most
don't
of you.
hire people. What?
No, but we know
I'm
the
not a
people
recruiter.
and we know the systems that you should be using.
Yes, that's.
Thank you, Pinpointe Unfiltered, for having such amazing guests. That all I have to do is go back and like scroll and find out, hey, this guy needs this guy. But sorry, yeah, call Pinpointe. We got you. Shameless plug.
Yeah. Brought to you by Pinpointe.
Brought to you by Pinpointe Sound Guy.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about the cultural differences, right? So, you were saying earlier that Americans, at least in like VC and in fundraising, we are a little less risk averse than Europeans. And then also like there's a whole bunch of nuances about hiring at will and how American work culture, right? And I think also in general, a lot of people, when they expand to the US, they think that they can continue to do business the way that they've always done it. And I don't think that you should necessarily change who you are, but I feel like you probably have to adapt to the US market. You might, I'm assuming, be a little bit more boastful, and not be afraid to walk into rooms. But yeah, I'm just super curious, like how have you seen that play out, like cultural differences? And then what would you suggest, and how do you help those founders or companies that are coming here?
Well, I love this question because during COVID times, I actually wrote a book on building your personal brand and how your personal brand grows your professional brand, right? A lot of companies, they want to grow the company brand really fast. Like no one's heard of you, right? Like, sorry, but unless, if I say, the way I look at this, if I say, well, they'll say Steve Jobs. If I say Microsoft, Bill Gates, if I say, Nike, Phil Knight, like the name recognition to the founder, Amazon, Bezos, right? Mostly all men too, right? So you think about this, there's this like idea of like company. But the idea is that people tend to know and care about you more than the brand to start. And so you want to build that personal brand up first, get people to know what you're doing and really, why. And, there's the whole Simon Sinek, start with why, which I love, but I also think there's one step before that, and that's start with where you are. Where are your feet currently planted and what are you building? What was the impetus for building it? Because your why, it's hard to manufacture a why without understanding what led you to where your feet are today. And so and I get this feedback a lot because I do a lot of workshops on personal branding where we go through about telling your story and how to pitch and how to do all these things. And I'm always like, that's not me. That's not how we grew up. That's not, and then what if I do that? People back in my home country are going to look at me funny. And I'm like, yeah, but you have to stop caring, because if you want to make it here, you got to share, because no one else is telling the story the way you can. No one's going to hear your story the way you can tell, because you as the founder or you as the leader needs to really highlight that from a personal place and drive the personal to the business. They understand what the business is doing and why it got started. And so there's this whole cultural thing of like, people ask me like, Rob, why are Americans so naturally better storytellers? And I thought about this for a while, and I think it comes down to kind of two things. One is our culture of sport. Yes, there's sport in other cultures, but we as a country put kids in little league, flag football so much faster, where we force them to make friends. We force them to be outside. We force them to learn group sports and talk. And then also when you think about college, you go away for college. You don't go to, you're seeing more Europeans go away to college, but a lot of times they live close to home, they live with family. We're saying, no, you're 18, you're going to go move here. You're going to live in a dorm with a random roommate, and you're going to figure out how to make dumb decisions and learn from it on your own. And you learn this ability to kind of make new friends and grow up in a way where Americans have friends that, are friends from kids. They have your grade school friends, you have your high school friends, and you have your college friends.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different way of doing things, but we've been conditioned to be more out there through our growing up and the way that our culture is. We're pushing more people to be in a room, right? Which is also hard, not very hard, but I think that's where we've learned this storytelling and also our advertising and that. Like, we just learned how to tell better stories. And the biggest thing culturally that they miss is the ability to tell a great story. Europeans tend to feature, benefit, sell everything. If you ever ask a European to introduce themselves, they'll be like, "Hi, my name is Rob Napoli. I'm 38. I'm the founder of." I'm like, I don't ever want you to say your name, your age again. That's not relevant to me. All that does is put me in a flip place of like potentially ageism. Rob Napoli, I'm the founder of this. This is my journey. This is what I'm building. Right. And it's those little things that you have to really kind of change out of them. Big vision, benefit, feature versus feature, benefit, into big vision, and really reverse engineer how you tell your story. And that's something that most Europeans or not Americans struggle with because it's not their culture. And then they feel like they're getting side eyed and judged back home for what they're trying to do for a bigger market. And that's a really hard thing to do until you kind of make that jump over to really be able to kind of share and tell your story.
Yeah. That's super interesting. And I feel like that's also helpful for us, like me and Josh, right? Like having to kind of be the face of the company. Because when we started Pinpointe 4 years ago, neither one of us wanted to be the face. And
just want to work. Just want to do deals, work,
just want to
it.
work. I have like I'm not an I don't have social anxiety, but I'm not like a social media person. I don't like being out like putting myself on display. And I think that's the same idea. I think it's like I don't want to curate a version of who I am, which is what people do in social media and what you're describing, right, as it being a storyteller, right? You're telling the version of yourself that you want known. But right, as with life, I have learned that it doesn't matter what I want, and it's what we have to do if we want to be successful, right? So we started the podcast because we didn't want to create random videos for social media. So we started just like Josh and I talking about real estate stuff, and that's how we started the podcast, right? And to use those little clips as our social media content. And then I really got into LinkedIn and I met a bunch of really cool people through that. And so I've become the face of the company, I guess. Not I guess, but definitely. And it's I think you're right. I mean, you are right, not I think. It's people are more likely to want to work with us because of me, right? Of the persona that I have. I still don't like having a persona, which is why I'm still very much me, right? In person or on social media. I definitely curate some of the things that I say on social media, right? Because I'm not trying to get canceled. Um, cause if Josh and anybody that knows me very well knows that I am contrarian on purpose. I I like to die on hills that I have no interest in, but just because someone needs to do it. But yeah, for like business, that doesn't really help. So I still have to like curate, which isn't icky, but whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because what you just say here is really important to kind of pull apart a little bit. I like to be contrarian at times, not because I want to necessarily just fight people, but I like to be contrarian because I'm curious and I like to I'll be a little contrarian or ask a question or highlight something to really understand I want to know more about it. And, you know, there's kind of this pendulum swing of like, who you are, what you believe in, and then kind of what you show online. And yes, you have to curate a little bit, and that seems icky, especially after the rise of influencers, where we also saw how many influencers in that big era of influencers, how many people got burnt out because they had to be this thing, or if they try to move content to the next level. And there's this kind of theory that if you stand for, you have to stand for something, otherwise you stand for nothing, and then therefore you can't be. And that's why we've gotten so politically charged and divided. Is people, if you're not on this or that, you're nothing. And I think the beauty of running a podcast, and this is where I think every business should have a podcast, or if nothing else, when you're trying to create content, is sit down with people that you know and care about, and you just talk about what are you doing, why you're doing it, and also sharing a little bit like these are things that I struggle with, these are things I'm not good at, these are things that we want to do more of or learn, because that really shows who you are. And it comes down to people at the end of the day will always buy from people, especially when it comes to services based work, right? When it comes to a service, a software, they want to know that the person on the other end understands what they're going through and is willing to help in the best way possible. And so you have to really have a little bit of that vulnerability, authenticity, and relatability, because it's no longer what you know. It used to be not what you know, who you know. It's now who knows you. And the things I tell people and coach them is, are you interested in the other person? Are you able to relate and be interested? And are you interesting? Right? Are you something that provides value back? You provide value before you get value. Can you really find that line of really showing and sharing? And the best way to do that is through stuff like this. Conversations like this are the best way to create content. I always tell people, easiest way to create content is sit down and just have a chat with somebody you care about, somebody that interview you. And, if you don't want to be video recorded, do it with a meeting note taker. And then you take those notes and ask, we have all these AI tools now, ask it to kind of take the themes and create a few blog posts, create a couple LinkedIn posts, like talk about these things. And this is a great way to kind of show who you are in a curated way that's still authentically you. At the end of the day, it's authentically you. And there's been times where people haven't in the past. I've done a lot of things in my past. I was a career for 10 years. I've worked in corporates. I've ran my own companies. I've written books. I've done podcasts. And, at one point I had a big
let's
man
not forget
bun.
the really important thing.
Yeah, I coached American football in Italy, and, I have tattoos, and like I've worked in organizations where I had to wear a suit every day, but I was like, no to a tie. Will you cut your hair? No. Will you take off the earrings? Yes. Sometimes people are going to judge you or not want to work with you because of a certain look or feel or thing. But at the end of the day, authentically, I'm going to be me. I'm going to share how I share. I'm going to just be honest and truthful and transparent, because if you want to work with me, then I want to work with you, but it's got to be a two-way street. I'm not going to try to be someone I'm not. Like, I love putting on a suit and looking good, but also like today, I've got like the athletic shirt on. I'm working from home. I know that this is going to be more of a chill conversation. I just wanted to match the vibe where we just put up, right? And you want to show all those sides, because you want people to want to work with you, because they believe that you're going to have the best interest and create the best possible opportunity in whatever way or shape that is. And they'll never know that without seeing you, getting to know you, hearing about you, hearing from you, and being referred to you. And when those things start to happen, good things happen for businesses, relationships, networking, and all of those things. And so it is hard and it is tough to do, but once you start to do it, we don't need, and I would say this, we don't need more content creators. We need more content engagers. All thesis in my book is not to be a content creator, to be a content engager. You need to put some of your own content out, but engaging with the communities that you serve, sharing stuff for the communities that you serve, and just making sure that your message hits to those that you want to serve, versus trying to be this version of yourself that's a TEDx speaker or a multi-million dollar or whatever. Like, be who you are, and good things will happen from that. So that's kind of my opinion on it. Obviously, you know, everyone has their own mousetrap, but my opinion is just you need to show and share who you are and what you're about and what makes you unique and why people should want to work with you. If you do that, all the things will start taking care of itself.
Yeah.
I usually just send them my twerking videos and like, watch me twerk and the business just starts flowing in.
No. Yeah. No, but I think like you also said, like, right, it's like people, like, they're not going to know who you are, right? Like, and that's something that we've been struggling with as we, created this relocation program, is nobody knows that we exist. We've been trying, obviously, all the different ways that we can to get the word out, minus paying lots of money for that. And I feel like I've seen brands, especially obviously, VC funded brands, all of a sudden they're everywhere, right? So that's how people start to know them, and we're doing it obviously much more organically. And LinkedIn, like I said, has been like super helpful. That's how I've met like some people. I'm like, oh, how did you like find me? And they're like, LinkedIn. And I'm like, that's crazy. And then the other thing is like AI. We've had a bunch of leads come from like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini. It's like,
I
oh,
want to
that's
say the last probably 10 potential clients. Same thing over and over, like how they're finding us.
which
So
is
yeah, technically,
it's
Rach,
crazy.
they do know us. It's just not everybody knows us.
I want everybody to know us, right? Like, and that's the thing. I want Pinpointe to be the people that you go to when you're coming to New York, whether it's short term, long term, whatever, right? Like when we started doing like group hotel rates, because short term in New York, short term housing, for those folks that don't know, it's limited to 30 days minimum, right? But then there are plenty of folks that come here for accelerator programs. Like we work with SOSA, right? And they do the international landing pad through the EDC. And they basically have their cohort come for 1 week every quarter. Okay, that means they're staying at a hotel. They can't, unless they live here, they're staying at a hotel when they're coming here because they can't do short term. And that made me realize there's a whole bunch of other programs like that that need help. So we started doing that. Are we trying to be a travel agency? Fuck no. Uh, but can we be the place that you go to? Like, hey, I need to come to New York for, I'm going to be looking at hiring my new CMO that's going to be here while I'm going to be in Belgium or wherever, right? Like, so yeah, that's like but what's the best way to get us like in front of those people? And I feel like that's again happened organically. Like it's people have found us from LinkedIn. We've gone to events. We've met people like you who've introduced us to other folks. And that for like, but that's how we've grown since day one, is always been word of mouth. That has always been like, it's just getting into this new market for us has been a little bit more of a struggle because it was completely new for us. But now I feel like, yeah, like that's always going to be what works for us, is people that know us, that vouch for us and want to work with us.
Yeah. And that's
And
how
my
you want to
twerking
start
videos.
And your twerking videos.
And this is really interesting that you share that, right? Because what you just highlighted is, and it always will be the power of a referral, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm really, I'm a super connector. I network a lot, and that's part of my job. That's why I'm the managing director of BelCham. But, I get asked to make a lot of intros, and that's why I always do double opt-in intros. But like, there's certain people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I have to be careful about those intros and the word of mouth, because I want to make sure that when I connect some people up, it's the right people at the right time with the right things to where it could do business. Because if I run that and burn that out, I lose my network, I lose the connections, I lose my reputation, right? So word of mouth is always the strongest. And in business, the most powerful thing is a referral, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that will only take, that's, going slow and low, right? There's the whole thing. If you want to run fast, run alone. If you want to run far, run together, right? That goes in there. But there is this kind of like acceleration moment. And you're seeing the fact that, AI is helping people find you because they're searching relocation assistance. They're searching, how do I find this? And that's the power of putting out videos like this. And the content you're putting out is the fact that it's being relevantly tagged so that when people are searching for it, you're coming up.
Mm-hmm.
That is really impactful. And that's showing that the power of the videos, the content like this, the stuff you're doing on LinkedIn, going up to those events, putting content does matter, right? There's two parts of creating content. There's the brand awareness, who knows you, right? That starts the funnel. And there's these meaningful touch points that have to happen along the way for them to want to start a meaningful connection. Obviously, that's sped up through referrals and through direct introductions, but touch points are content, right? And I tell people all the time, like, no one's going to go to your blog and read every blog, right? Blogs aren't there for that reason. Blogs are there so you have content out there that's trackable, SEO optimized. It has really good
Mm-hmm.
information. So when people are searching for things, it gets highlighted. You have the link backs. It helps with the algorithm for being findable, right? Videos make
Mm-hmm.
a big difference because now I can watch a few videos. I may watch 5 minutes and be like, yep, this, I want to call these people, or you know what, they're not I don't like what they're having to say. I'm going to go find something else. But it gives that time and space for by the time they get on the phone with you, they already feel like they know you a little bit because they've watched a few videos, they've done research, they've looked into these things. And so the conversation becomes much more organic, much more focus driven into the business side because they've seen your faces, they've heard you talk, they understand how you do business, they understand what you're trying to help people with. And that's the power of the content, right? It helps with the business development life cycle of doing that. That's where these things make a huge difference. And, if you want to be everywhere, obviously you got to pay to play the game a little bit, spend money to make money, but you don't have to do that out the gate. A lot of people do that too fast, but then it's weak because they don't have enough content or enough messaging there to really drive it forward,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can't remember how many times I see get LinkedIn ads. I see it's like, oh, this is really cool. I order, and then I have to wait 3 weeks for the product to get there. Do I got to order from there again? Hell no. Like I can go order from all these other companies that have product within 2 or 3 days, right? So that life cycle matters. The content around that matters into if I reach out to you, how fast do you respond? And I tell people this all the time. When you get somebody that reaches out to want to do business, 24 hours. You don't respond in 24 hours. Do you think it's going to work
Speed to
hard for them?
lead.
Exactly. So these things matter in this, and that's where content matters in terms of just really making the difference and being findable, and also having that sense of I know you before I meet you, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
meeting you because I do believe you can help. And that's why I think the power of video content is so strong. And you don't have to do a whole lot. Just conversations like this. You put it on YouTube. You put a few clips out. You have the shorts drive to the longer form. People can find it. They can see the short little hits, and it makes a big difference in terms of sales cycle and those touch points.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of our clients actually liked us because I put my dog Ollie as our CEO on our website, and
Little things like
and
that
people
just
looked at it and
make
were
you
like,
unique.
"Oh, yeah, yeah." They're like, "Oh, they don't take themselves that seriously."
Well, I was saying that there's also like, not to totally switch gears, but there's also one thing I kind of want to go back to is we're like looking
Hmm.
at this and we're talking about the work that you do, cultural differences, creating content, all these things. One of the things that I think European founders don't always understand when they come to the US is our credit system. They come over without a
Mm,
credit score. They come over. And so when you're trying to set up a business, when you're trying to rent an apartment, when you're trying to get office space, when you're trying to grow, they kind of fail on this piece that they don't understand the credit score. And so it's also
mm-hmm,
really, really important. And I've had a lot of businesses that I work with. I always kind of talk to them like American Express has a really good European program to build a credit score for the US and those things. Like
mm-hmm,
make
mm-hmm.
sure that you know those things. And I can't tell you how many businesses that I work with, they use debit cards to pay for stuff. I'm like, no, never use a debit card to put down, always a credit card. Because if you ever get fraud and lose money, credit cards, you have fraud protection. Your bank debit card in the bank doesn't provide the same fraud protection and the ability to get your money back. And so it's really, really important and impactful to understand the US credit system. If you're going to come build an office here and really drive and how you're going to pay for things and how you're going to buy stuff, especially when you're building out a team and the different things, but
Mm-hmm.
also when you're relocating here. Can't tell you how big of an impact that has on getting a cell phone, getting internet, getting an apartment, as you know very well. I know you've posted content about this. And this is why your content matters, right? Is people don't hear that enough. They don't know that enough. They come over here with one hand tied behind their back. And so they're tied with
Yeah.
one hand behind their back because they don't have a credit score and they have to go about building this business. And it's hard for them to get apartments and office
Mm-hmm.
space and
Yeah.
equipment. And
Everything.
so I just want to tie that in because we're talking about all this content and something you said about like how you're being found. I remember one of the things I thought interesting is like how many conversations I have with founders. Hey, if you're going to make this jump, make sure you understand and start a credit card, especially in Europe with American Express, whatever. Build your credit score. So when you're coming over here,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to make your life easier when you make that jump across them. So I want to kind of circle back to that as we kind of close out here and get
Yeah.
towards the end of time is that that's a really big miss for a lot of founders and they need to know that. And I know that some of the content you shared is really directly related to that. And that's really helpful. And again, providing good content that they're like, oh, I didn't know that. I should call Rachel and Josh. Let me understand this,
Yeah.
because if I'm going to come
Yeah.
over relocating and I don't have a credit score, and I, go through the process, and I'm sure you have people call you after getting denied for an apartment or for an office space or something because they don't have a credit score. And they're like, well, I have the money to put down, but they don't have enough to do the guarantor. They don't understand the whole guarantor system here in the States either. And that becomes a big problem. That's why your content, again, like ties back to content matters, and putting out that type of content is what people will see, realize there's a miss, and realize they need to call somebody to ask those questions. And so I get that a lot. It's something that you asked, the cultural differences I forgot about. Big piece that people share with me.
Yeah,
like I'm always advising them on.
Yeah, I think there are some countries, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the UK does have credit, but it's very, very different, and it's not used as much as we rely on it. Like every decision is based on credit in this country, and you can't transfer your credit. You have to start from scratch like an 18-year-old baby. But I tell people all the time, right? Like, if you have an Amex, call them up and have them transfer it to an American account. Boom. So when you get your social security number, your credit's going to go up. You're going to get credit. And that's going to be helpful. Is it going to help you get your apartment right away? No, but we know the workarounds to do that. And is it going to help? Like, I literally talked to a founder from Australia, and she came here and she was like, I spent a month looking for apartments, trying to get a phone, trying to open a bank account, all these things that I couldn't do. And I was like, yeah, I would have done that for you in 2 days. Right. Like, we know,
literally.
we know, like, we have a network of these people, right? And we know the workarounds. Sure, can you figure it out yourself and save yourself the money from paying us? Absolutely. But the learning curve is quite long. You're going to waste a lot of time. And if you're a founder coming here, right, you should be focused on market expansion and all the things that you said, right, which is not finding an office, right, not spending time on logistics. You should be working on building out your go-to market, right? Building that business. And again, relocating is one of those things that you should not be focused on, in my opinion, because especially in New York, it is extremely difficult.
I mean,
and we already have the network, so use us.
Yeah. That's the thing that you have to, as a founder and you're expanding your business and you're doing these things, one of the things you really have to look at is opportunity cost. Are you willing to pay a little more for an easier experience? Because now once you've learned that on the first end, maybe they use you once and they figure it out, but then it's like, well, how can you help me further, right? And then what's the upsell value and all these things? Sometimes it's easier to spend a little more to make that process easier. We pay for convenience, right? And that's sometimes why people buy first class ticket, or you fly the same airline so you get priority boarding, just so you can. And you have to really understand that opportunity cost. I always fly United. Shout out United; they're a big partner to us and all that good stuff.
Sorry, we're Delta people.
Delta.
But I know. I gotta shout out one of our members, right? But it is a struggle for me because I live in Brooklyn. I can be at LaGuardia and JFK in 15 minutes. It takes me an hour to get to Newark, right? May have to pay a little bit more for the flight, but then I'm not paying for extra baggage. I'm not paying for these things. I can't tell you how many free flights I've taken to go back home. My flight back to North Dakota free because I have the miles, right? That's an opportunity cost for me, right? And this is why you pay for convenience. And sometimes you need to understand, pay a little more upfront to have things be smoother so that you can focus on your business. And sometimes you want to figure it out yourself. That totally makes sense. But I think as a company looking to expand, you really have to understand opportunity costs and know what is worth your time, energy, and effort to do yourself, and what is worth the little bit of extra money to have somebody help with that to make your experience moving to the city a little bit easier, a little bit smoother, because the headaches that go along with that just derail everything else that happens in the city, especially a city like New York. And, scaling your business in those first months are critical when you're meeting with customers and you're doing all these things and kicking stuff up. If you're spending 8 hours a week at the bank, running between the bank and this, that, and the other, you're missing out on time with your customers. You're missing out on time with your team. You're missing out on onboarding. You're missing out on development you're missing out on. And that's something you have to take into account. And, from an example like our chamber, we're a membership organization. You pay a membership fee because what you get from the chamber, the people you meet, the network, the opportunity, the events, all those things help speed along your business. You have to decide, is it worth spending my money here to have a bigger network, connections, especially when I'm getting started? A lot of people, that is. That's a decision, right? That's an opportunity cost and a decision you have to make. Where do you spend your dollars to make them work for you that gets max return on investment in terms of where you can spend your time, energy, and effort? Because you can do anything, but you can't do everything. And there's services like this that just make life easier. And it's really important for founders to know that those exist and also save themselves some headaches in different times and places.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And not only for their personal, journey, also for their employees, right? Where we have the numbers that go into how much these founders are losing with hiring the wrong people and, rolling the dice of this, and how much it actually costs when their employees are running around looking at the banks and blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. That's why honestly, it works out great personally. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. But when you start scaling it towards your employees, where now you have to do this process 4, 5, 6 times over and what it's going to cost, that's when it just kind of makes sense to use this type of network, use people like us.
Yeah. Because it's not just the opportunity cost anymore. It has an actual revenue cost. But yeah, we should be wrapping up, and I think that was a great ending point. Is there anything you want to say before we wrap up? Anything you want to add, either of you? Plug.
I just appreciate the time and space, right? And really appreciate having you in my network and being able to talk about these things. And, really just, if anyone out there is listening is interested in the Belgian American Chamber of Commerce, even if you're not necessarily, we're a non-government, not-for-profit. So, if you're looking for community space, if you're looking for virtual address services, those type of things, obviously we are focused on Belgium and Belgian members, but we have some ability to also help in different places and spaces. So, if it makes sense and you hear it and you think that this can be a good place for you, give us a call. We're always down to take a meeting, show you the office, and see what we can do to help out, or where to point you in the right direction when it comes to different partners, regional governments, these type of things, especially when you look at Belgium. So we're here for everybody, and we want to build a great, solid community here in New York and beyond. Really allowing to fuel Belgian ambition in the US. So that's my little plug. And for anyone out there listening, we can help you. Give us a call. We're always here for you.
Sweet. So where can they find you?
Yeah. BelCham.org. It's the website. Everything's there. Has all my contact information. You can follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn. It's just Rob Napoli. I'm usually the first one that comes up. Pretty clear to tell which one's mine. The logos and everything. So I have a distinct look with the beard and everything. So there's pretty easy. So find me on LinkedIn, on our website, and follow along on the journey.
Or at your local pub, drinking and watching sports.
If you're in Brooklyn, you're likely to find me at a few of my locals chopping it up and, watching the games.
I will not ever... No, come to go to Manhattan. I'll meet you halfway.
Dude, I hope you were going to say come to Jersey. You said what?
No, I'm not going to say come to Jersey. Go to Manhattan. I'll meet you there.
I got a few spots in Manhattan too. Our office on 39th and 7th. So I got a few good places in Midtown right off the train. So we can definitely meet up for a pint and watch one of the games come up soon.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
All right, Rob. Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah.
Oh, Rach, where can they find you?
Oh shit. You can find me, Rachel Fiegler, on LinkedIn. That's about it. You could find Pinpointe Group. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. Our website, pinpoint.nyc. You could find our podcasts anywhere you get your podcasts. Also on our website, you can find our newsletter, which I've been slacking on, so my bad on that. Yeah. Or just ask ChatGPT how to relocate to New York. Boom. There we are.
Yep, guys. And you can find me, Josh Hernandez, on LinkedIn. Pretty much that's about it. And as always, such a great time. Rob, you killed it.
Thank you so
brother.
much. Peace.